The cold stone floor bit into Clara's knees as she scrubbed. Her hands were raw and red from the harsh soap. Above her head, music floated down from the grand ballroom. The orchestra played a waltz. Ladies in silk gowns twirled across polished floors while Clara cleaned the dirt they tracked through the halls. She paused to push a strand of brown hair from her face. Her back ached. She had been working since dawn. The ball had started 3 hours ago, and she still had 2 more hallways to finish before she could sleep. "You missed a spot," a sharp voice said. Clara looked up. Mrs. Pemberton, the housekeeper, stood over her with arms crossed. The woman's face was hard as the stone. Clara knelt on. "Yes, ma'am," Clara whispered. She scrubbed harder at the already clean floor. "Lazy girl," Mrs. Pemberton muttered. "Your mother was lazy too. That's why she died in debt, leaving you to work it off." The words stung more than the cold floor. Clara bit her lip to keep from crying. Her mother had not been lazy. She had been sick. But no one cared about the truth. Mrs. Pemberton walked away, her keys jangling at her waist. Clara dipped her brush back into the bucket. The water was grey and cold. Her reflection rippled on the surface. She barely recognized herself anymore. Once she had been a merchant's daughter. Now she was nobody. The music swelled above. Clara imagined what it would feel like to dance, to wear a gown that wasn't torn and stained, to have someone look at her like she mattered. But those were foolish dreams for a girl who scrubbed floors. She had been at Thornfield Manor for 2 years. When her mother died, the debts had fallen on Clara's shoulders. Lord Ashworth owned those debts now. He owned her labour until every penny was repaid. At the rate they paid her, that would take 20 years. Clara had been 17 when she arrived. Now she was 19. She felt ancient. Her hands looked like an old woman's hands. Her back hurt all the time, and her heart had learned not to hope for anything better. The other servants ignored her mostly. She was the lowest of the low. Even the kitchen cat got better treatment. Clara slept in a tiny room off the scullery. It had no window and barely enough space for her thin mattress, but it was hers. The only place she could be alone. She finished the hallway and moved to the next. Her knees left wet marks on the stone as she crawled forward. The bucket sloshed beside her. She had done this so many times she didn't need to think about it anymore. Her body knew the motions, her mind could wander. Tonight it wandered to her mother. Clara remembered her mother's gentle hands and soft voice. She remembered their small but clean cottage. She remembered feeling safe and loved. Those memories hurt now. They reminded her of everything she had lost. A door opened above. Laughter spilled out with the music. Clara pressed herself against the wall, making herself small. She knew what happened when nobles noticed servants. Nothing good. But no one came down the stairs. The door closed again. The laughter faded. Clara let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. She worked through the night. By the time she finished, the first light of dawn crept through the high windows. The ball had ended hours ago. The house was finally quiet. Clara emptied her bucket and put away her brush. Her whole body trembled with exhaustion. In her tiny room, she collapsed onto her mattress. She didn't bother to remove her wet dress. Sleep took her before she could even close her eyes properly. 3 floors above, in a bedroom larger than Clara's entire world, Alexander Thornfield stood at his window. He was the Duke of Ashworth, master of this grand estate and 6 others like it. He was 30 years old and completely alone. The ball had been his mother's idea. She insisted he needed to find a wife. She had invited every eligible lady in the county. They had smiled at him with calculating eyes. They had laughed at his polite jokes. They had danced with practiced grace. And he had felt nothing. Alexander loosened his cravat and poured himself a drink. The whiskey burned going down, but it didn't warm the cold place inside his chest. Nothing warmed that place anymore. Not since Emma died. Emma had been his wife. They had married young, full of hope and plans for the future. She had been kind and beautiful and everything good in his world. Then fever took her 3 years ago. She had been gone in a week. Alexander had been holding her hand when she took her last breath. He hadn't been able to save her. All his money and power meant nothing against death. He had learned that lesson well. After Emma died, Alexander had thrown himself into managing his estates. He worked constantly. He avoided social events. He spoke to no one unless business required it. His mother worried. His friends gave up trying to reach him. He preferred it that way. Feeling nothing was better than feeling the pain. But his mother had finally insisted on the ball. She said he needed to remarry. He needed an heir. He needed to move forward with his life. Alexander knew she was right, but the thought of replacing Emma made him sick. He had danced with a dozen women tonight. They all blurred together, pale faces, eager smiles, practiced conversation. None of them were Emma. None of them ever would be. Alexander finished his drink and set the glass down harder than he meant to. It cracked. Blood welled on his palm where a sharp edge cut him. He watched the red drop fall onto the white tablecloth. He felt detached from it, like it was happening to someone else. He wrapped his hand in his handkerchief and went to bed. Sleep did not come easily. It never did anymore. The next morning, Clara woke to someone shaking her shoulder. She opened her eyes to find Mrs. Pemberton standing over her. The housekeeper's face was pinched with displeasure. "Get up," she snapped. "You're needed in the Duke's study." Fear shot through Clara. Servants were only called to the Duke's study when something was very wrong. She scrambled to her feet, still wearing yesterday's damp dress. "What did I do?" she asked. "How should I know?" Mrs. Pemberton said. "But if you've cost me my position with your laziness, I'll see you thrown out without a reference." Clara's hands shook as she tried to smooth her hair. There was no time to wash or change. She followed Mrs. Pemberton through the servant corridors and up the back stairs. With each step, her heart pounded harder. They reached the main floor. Clara had never been in this part of the house during daylight. Everything was rich and beautiful. Paintings hung on the walls. Thick carpets covered the floors. Crystal chandeliers caught the morning sun. Mrs. Pemberton knocked on a heavy oak door. "Enter," a deep voice said. The housekeeper opened the door and pushed Clara inside. Then she left, closing the door behind her. Clara stood, frozen, her eyes on the carpet. She didn't dare look up. "You are Clara Bennett?" the voice asked. "Yes, Your Grace," Clara whispered. "Look at me." It was not a request. Clara raised her eyes slowly. The Duke of Ashworth sat behind a massive desk. He was younger than she expected. His face was handsome but cold. His dark eyes studied her without expression. He wore black, as if in mourning. His left hand was bandaged. "You have been employed here for 2 years, he said. "Yes, Your Grace." "Working off your mother's debts?" "Yes, Your Grace." Clara's voice came out barely above a whisper. He picked up a paper from his desk. "According to the records, your mother owed £200. You earn £6 per year. At that rate, your debt will be cleared in approximately 33 years. The number hit Clara like a blow. 33 years. She would be 52 years old. Her life would be over before she was free. I was not aware the terms were so unfavorable, the Duke said. His tone remained flat, giving nothing away. Mrs. Pemberton has been managing the household accounts. It seems she negotiated your wages without my knowledge. Clara said nothing. What could she say? She had no power here. The Duke set down the paper. I am reviewing all household arrangements. Your situation has come to my attention. He paused, studying her face. You may go. Clara curtsied awkwardly and fled. Her heart raced as she hurried back to the servant areas. She didn't understand what had just happened. Was she in trouble? Was he going to make things worse? That night, Mrs. Pemberton called her to the housekeeper's office. The woman's face was red with anger. You've been telling tales, she hissed. No, ma'am, Clara said. I said nothing. I swear it. The Duke has reduced my authority over household wages. He's reviewing every account. Mrs. Pemberton leaned close. Her breath smelled of onions. If I lose my position, girl, I'll make sure you suffer for it. Clara worked even harder in the following days. She tried to be invisible. She scrubbed floors until her hands bled. She carried heavy buckets until her arms screamed. She never complained. She barely spoke. A week after being called to the Duke's study, Mrs. Pemberton summoned her again. Clara's stomach twisted with dread. You're being moved, the housekeeper said. Her lips were pressed into a thin line. Moved? Clara repeated. The Duke requires a maid for the library. You will clean and maintain that room daily. You will also assist when His Grace requires refreshments or wishes a fire built. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes were cold. If you make any mistakes, you'll be back to scrubbing floors. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Clara couldn't believe it. The library was inside work. It was warm and dry. It was the kind of position other maids would envy. Why had she been chosen? The next morning, Mrs. Pemberton led her to the library. Clara stepped inside and gasped. She had never seen so many books. They lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A ladder on wheels allowed access to the highest shelves. Large windows let in streams of sunlight. Comfortable chairs sat arranged near a massive fireplace. You will arrive at dawn to clean, Mrs. Pemberton instructed. The Duke often works here in the afternoon. You will remain available but unobtrusive. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Don't touch the books unless you're dusting them. Don't move anything from its place. Don't speak unless spoken to. Mrs. Pemberton gave her a final hard look. This is your chance to improve your situation. Don't waste it. She left. Clara stood alone in the beautiful room. Slowly, she approached the nearest shelf. The books were leather-bound with gold lettering. She recognized some titles. Her mother had taught her to read, though Clara hadn't held a book in years. She reached out and gently touched a spine. The leather was smooth under her fingers. Something inside her chest loosened slightly. Something that had been tight for so long. Clara began her work. She dusted each shelf carefully. She swept the floors. She cleaned the windows until they sparkled. She built a fire in the fireplace, arranging the wood exactly right so it would burn clean and hot. By afternoon, the room glowed. Clara felt proud of her work. She had just settled into a corner with her mending when the door opened. The Duke entered. He didn't look at her. He went straight to his desk and began reading through papers. Clara made herself very small. She focused on her stitching, her needle moving in and out of the fabric with tiny, careful movements. An hour passed in silence. Then the Duke spoke. Tea, please. Clara jumped up. Yes, your grace. She hurried to the kitchen and returned with a tray. Her hands shook slightly as she poured. She was so focused on not spilling that she didn't notice he was watching her. You can read, he said. It wasn't a question. Clara looked up, confused. His eyes were on her mending. She had been repairing a page torn from a book. She had matched the text carefully, making sure the words lined up. My mother taught me, Your Grace, Clara said quietly. What did you read? Whatever we could afford, Your Grace. Poetry mostly. Some novels. My mother loved Shakespeare. Something flickered across the Duke's face. Too quick for Clara to identify. He turned back to his papers without another word. Clara finished pouring his tea and retreated to her corner. But she felt his eyes on her several more times that afternoon. Each time she pretended not to notice. Days turned into weeks. Clara fell into a routine. She arrived at dawn to prepare the library. The Duke appeared most afternoons. Sometimes he worked in silence. Other times he asked her to build up the fire or fetch him something. He never made conversation beyond simple instructions. But Clara noticed things. She noticed how his shoulders tensed when he read certain letters. She noticed how he sometimes stared out the window with eyes that saw nothing. She noticed the shadows under his eyes that suggested he slept poorly. She also noticed that he was kind in small ways. He never raised his voice. He always said please and thank you. Once, when she brought him tea, he told her to pour herself a cup and drink it while it was hot. She had been too shocked to refuse. Clara found herself looking forward to the afternoons. The library felt like a sanctuary. It was warm and quiet and filled with words. Sometimes, when the Duke was absorbed in his work, she would read the titles on the spines nearby. She memorized them. At night, in her tiny room, she would recite them like prayers. One rainy afternoon, Clara was dusting the higher shelves. She stood on the ladder, reaching for a spot near the ceiling. The ladder wheel caught on something. It jerked suddenly. Clara lost her balance with a cry. Strong hands caught her. She found herself pressed against a firm chest. She looked up into the Duke's face. He was so close she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Are you hurt? He asked. His voice was different. Concerned, almost gentle. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. She shook her head, unable to speak. He set her down carefully. His hands lingered on her waist for just a moment. Then he stepped back, and his expression went cold again. Be more careful, he said. Yes, Your Grace. Thank you, Your Grace. He returned to his desk. But his hands, Clara noticed, were trembling slightly as he picked up his pen. That night, Clara lay awake. She could still feel where his hands had touched her waist. She could still see his face so close to hers. She could still hear that note of concern in his voice. It meant nothing, she told herself. He would have caught anyone who was falling. He was a gentleman. That was all. But something had shifted. She couldn't name it. She just knew that something had changed between them in that moment. The next afternoon, the Duke spoke to her without prompting. You said your mother loved Shakespeare, do you? Clara looked up from her mending. I've only read a few plays, Your Grace, but yes, I loved them. Which ones? Much Ado About Nothing, Romeo and Juliet, A Midsummer Night's Dream. He nodded slowly. The comedies and the romance, not the tragedy. We couldn't afford more books, Your Grace. I would have read them all if I could. He stood and went to one of the shelves. He ran his finger along the spines until he found what he wanted. He pulled out a book and brought it to her. Hamlet, he said. You may borrow it, if you wish. Clara stared at the book in his hands. Your Grace, you may read it when your work is done. Return it when you finish. He placed the book in her hands. Their fingers brushed. Clara felt that touch all the way to her bones. Thank you, Your Grace, she whispered. It's only a book, he said, but his voice was soft. That night, Clara read by candlelight until her eyes burned. Hamlet's words reached into her chest and squeezed her heart. She understood his pain. She understood feeling trapped by circumstances beyond your control. She understood the weight of grief. When she returned the book a week later, the Duke asked what she thought of it. It's beautiful, Clara said, and terrible and true. True? He asked. About grief. How it changes you. How it makes you feel like you're watching your own life from far away. The Duke went very still. His eyes searched her face. You've known grief? Yes, Your Grace. Your mother? Yes, Your Grace. He turned away. Clara thought she had said something wrong, but then he spoke again, his voice rough. My wife died 3 years ago. Clara's breath caught. She had heard rumors, of course. Servants always gossiped. But hearing it from him was different. There was such pain in those simple words. I'm sorry, Your Grace, she said softly. Everyone is sorry. It changes nothing. No, Clara agreed. It doesn't, but it helps to know you're not alone in the sadness. He looked at her then. Really looked at her, not as a servant, not as part of the furniture, but as a person who understood something important. Yes, he said quietly. It does help. After that day, they talked more. Not much, just small exchanges. But each conversation felt significant to Clara. He asked about her mother. She asked nothing about his wife, but he told her anyway, small things. How Emma had loved roses, how she had played the piano, how her laughter had filled the house. It's too quiet now, he said once. Yes, Clara said. After my mother died, the silence was the worst part. They understood each other in a way Clara had never experienced. They were from completely different worlds. He was a duke, she was a servant working off debt, but grief made them equals. Spring came. The library windows showed gardens coming back to life. Flowers bloomed, birds sang. The world insisted on being beautiful even though people suffered. One morning, Clara arrived to find the Duke already in the library. This was unusual. He normally came in the afternoon. He stood at the window, still wearing yesterday's clothes. His hair was disheveled. His face was haggard. Your Grace, Clara said hesitantly. Are you well? I couldn't sleep, he said without turning around. Clara set down her cleaning supplies. She should have remained silent. She should have worked quietly and let him be. But something in his voice stopped her. Would you like me to make you some tea? She asked gently. I would like... He stopped. His shoulders sagged. I don't know what I would like anymore. Clara's heart ached for him. She recognized that hollow tone. She had heard it in her own voice after her mother died. It was the sound of someone who had forgotten how to want anything. She went to the kitchen and made tea. She brought it back with some bread and butter. She set it on the small table near the fire. Please eat something, Your Grace, she said. He turned and looked at the food. Then at her. You're very kind, he said. His voice sounded surprised, as if he had just realized this. You've been kind to me, Clara said. You changed my work assignment. You let me borrow books. You treat me like a person, not just a servant. That's more kindness than I've known in years. He crossed the room slowly and sat down. He picked up the teacup, his hands wrapped around it, like he was cold. "I didn't change your assignment to be kind," he said. "I did it because Mrs. Pemberton was stealing from you. She was paying you half of what other scullery maids earn and pocketing the difference. When I discovered it, I wanted to give you better work." Clara sat down hard on the nearest chair. She hadn't known. All this time, she had thought she was being paid fairly. No wonder her debt seemed impossible to clear. "I've dismissed Mrs. Pemberton," the Duke continued, "and I've recalculated your debt. With proper wages, you've already paid off more than half. At the new rate, you'll be free in 2 years. 2 years, not 33. Not even 20. Just 2. Clara's vision blurred with tears. She pressed her hand to her mouth to hold back a sob. "Why are you crying?" the Duke asked. He sounded alarmed. "Because you've given me hope," Clara said. "I thought I would die here, still in debt. I thought I would never have a life of my own. But 2 years, I can survive 2 years." He set down his teacup. "Clara." It was the first time he had used her name. It sounded different in his voice, intimate. "Yes, Your Grace. Do you truly wish to leave when your debt is paid?" Clara looked up at him. His dark eyes were intense on her face. Her heart beat faster. "I don't know," she admitted. "I haven't let myself think about the future. It hurt too much." "Think about it now," he said. "If you could do anything, go anywhere, what would you choose?" No one had ever asked her that before. Clara thought about it carefully. "I would want a small house," she said slowly. "Nothing grand, just a place that's mine. I would want books, a garden, maybe a cat." She smiled a little. "Simple things, safe things. No husband, no family." Clara's smile faded. "Who would want to marry someone like me? I have nothing. I am nothing." "You're not nothing." His voice was fierce. "You're intelligent. You're kind. You're strong enough to survive circumstances that would break most people. Any man would be lucky to have you." Clara stared at him. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one had ever suggested she had value. "You don't know me, Your Grace," she whispered. "Don't I?" He leaned forward. "I've watched you for months. I've seen your gentleness with the injured bird you found in the garden. I've seen your careful attention to every task. I've heard your thoughts on books and poetry. I know you better than you think." Clara's breath came faster. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. "Your Grace, you shouldn't speak to me like this," she said. "Why not?" "Because I'm a servant. Because it's not proper. Because—" She trailed off, unable to finish. "Because you feel it too," he said quietly. Clara's face burned. She stood abruptly. "I should work now." She grabbed her dust cloth and turned away. Her hands shook as she began wiping the already clean shelves. She was very aware of him watching her. After a long moment, he left the library. Clara sagged against the bookshelf. Her heart raced. Her whole body trembled. She pressed her forehead to the cool leather spines and tried to calm down. Thus was impossible. He was a duke. She was nobody. Whatever she felt, whatever he seemed to feel, it couldn't matter. It couldn't lead anywhere. But that night, alone in her tiny room, Clara let herself remember his words. She let herself believe them for just a moment. And she fell asleep with something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope. The next few weeks were torture. The Duke continued to spend his afternoons in the library. They were polite to each other, careful, but the air between them crackled with unspoken things. Clara caught him watching her. She caught herself watching him. When they accidentally brushed hands, she felt it like lightning. Everything had become more intense, more confusing, more frightening. She tried to talk herself out of whatever she was feeling. It was ridiculous. She was being foolish. He was probably just bored. And she was a convenient distraction. Nothing could come of this. But then he would do something that shattered her defenses. He would leave a new book for her with a note saying he thought she would enjoy it. He would ask her opinion on estate matters, actually listening to her answers. He would smile at something she said, and his whole face would transform into something warm and beautiful. Clara was falling in love. She knew it was foolish. She knew it would only bring her pain, but she couldn't stop it any more than she could stop breathing. One afternoon in late spring, the Duke asked her to walk with him in the garden. Clara's heart jumped into her throat. "Your Grace, I don't think that's appropriate," she said. "I'll be the judge of what's appropriate in my own home," he said, but his tone was gentle, not commanding. "Please, Clara, walk with me." She couldn't refuse. They went out through the library's garden door. The roses were in bloom. Their scent filled the air. They walked side by side down a gravel path. Proper distance between them. Any observer would see nothing wrong. But Clara felt like she was doing something dangerous. Something that could change everything. "I want to tell you about Emma," the Duke said. Clara looked at him in surprise. He kept his eyes forward as he spoke. "She was wonderful. Truly good in a way most people aren't. When she died, I wanted to die too. I went through the motions of living, but I felt nothing. I was empty inside." He paused. They had reached a bench overlooking a small pond. He gestured for her to sit. She did. He sat beside her, still maintaining that proper distance. "Then you came to the library," he continued. "At first I barely noticed you. You were just another servant. But gradually I started to see you. Your kindness to every living thing, your hunger for books and learning, your strength, despite everything you've endured. You reminded me that there was still good in the world, still beauty, still reasons to feel things." Clara's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. "I'm not explaining this well," the Duke said. He sounded frustrated. "What I'm trying to say is that you've brought me back to life. You've made me want to be present in my own existence again. And he turned to look at her. "I have feelings for you, feelings that are entirely inappropriate given our positions. But feelings I can't seem to control." "Your Grace," Clara breathed. "Alexander," he said. "When we're alone, please call me Alexander." "I can't," Clara said. Tears pricked her eyes. "Don't you see, this is impossible. You're a duke. I'm a servant. Even if there was something between us, it could never work. Society would never accept it. Your family would never allow it. I don't care what society thinks." "You have to care." Clara stood up, needing distance from him. "You have responsibilities, a title to maintain. You need to marry someone appropriate, someone who can be a proper duchess, not someone who scrubs floors." "You don't scrub floors anymore," Alexander said. He stood too. "And I don't want a proper duchess. I want you." Clara shook her head. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You can't. You'll regret it. You'll come to resent me. And I couldn't bear that." "Clara, look at me." She did. His dark eyes were full of emotion. So much emotion it overwhelmed her. "I know this is complicated," he said. "I know there will be challenges, but I've been dead inside for 3 years. You've made me feel alive again. Don't ask me to go back to being dead." "What are you saying?" Clara whispered. Alexander reached out slowly. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. It was the most intimate touch Clara had ever experienced. "I'm saying I love you," he said quietly. "I'm saying I want you in my life. I'm saying I don't care what anyone else thinks because you're more important to me than their opinions. You love me? Clara couldn't believe the words. I love you. Clara closed her eyes. Her whole body trembled. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. She could step back to safety, or she could jump and pray he would catch her. I love you too, she whispered. His sharp intake of breath told her how much those words meant to him. When she opened her eyes, he was staring at her with wonder on his face. Say it again, he said. I love you, Alexander. He cupped her face in both hands. May I kiss you? Clara could barely breathe. She nodded. He lowered his head slowly. His lips touched hers gently, carefully. Like she was something precious that might break, Clara's eyes fluttered closed. She had never been kissed before. She hadn't known it could feel like this. Like coming home. Like finding something she hadn't known she'd been searching for all her life. The kiss lasted only moments. When Alexander pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. I don't know how we'll make this work, he admitted. But we'll find a way. I promise you that. Clara wanted to believe him. She wanted it so much it hurt, but she was afraid. Afraid of hoping for too much. Afraid of losing this fragile, beautiful thing they'd found. What do we do now? She asked. Now, Alexander said, we figure out how to be together without causing a scandal that will hurt you. I don't care if people talk about me. I care. He pulled back to look at her seriously. I won't have you subjected to cruelty because of me. We need to do this carefully. Clara understood what he wasn't saying. He needed to introduce the idea to his family. He needed to prepare society. He needed to protect her from the vicious gossip that would come. How long will that take? She asked. I don't know. But Clara, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Clara looked into his eyes. She saw sincerity there, and love, real love. The kind her mother had told her about in stories. I trust you, she said. They walked back to the house separately. Clara returned to the library through the servants' entrance. Her lips still tingled from his kiss. Her heart felt too big for her chest. She was terrified and exhilarated, and more alive than she had felt in years. That night, she barely slept. She kept replaying the afternoon in her mind. His words, his kiss, the way he had looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The next few days were strange. Alexander maintained professional distance when anyone else was around, but when they were alone in the library, he found small ways to touch her. A hand on her shoulder, fingers brushing hers when he took his teacup. Once he pulled her behind the tall shelves and kissed her breathless before releasing her with a smile. Clara was giddy with love. She felt like she was floating. Everything seemed brighter. Even her tiny room didn't depress her anymore because she knew Alexander loved her. But reality came crashing down a week later. Alexander's mother arrived unexpectedly. The Dowager Duchess swept into Thornfield Manor like a storm. Clara heard the commotion from the library. Raised voices, hurried footsteps. The entire household went into a frenzy. Alexander came to the library that evening looking grim. My mother knows, he said without preamble. Clara's stomach dropped. How? One of the servants gossiped. My mother has ears everywhere. He ran a hand through his hair. She's furious. She says I'm disgracing the family name. She's demanding I send you away immediately. Then you should, Clara said quietly. Her brief happiness shattered like glass. I knew this couldn't last. No. Alexander crossed to her and took her hands. I'm not sending you away. I'm going to talk to her, make her understand. She'll never understand. How could she? I'm nobody. You're not nobody to me. Alexander squeezed her hands. Please, Clara, don't give up on us yet. Let me try. Clara wanted to believe him, but she had learned not to hope for too much. Hope was dangerous. It made the fall hurt worse. All right, she said. I'll wait. He kissed her forehead and left. Clara sat in the quiet library and prepared for the worst. The next morning, Clara was summoned to the drawing room. She knew this was it. She was being dismissed. She held her head high as she entered. She wouldn't let them see her cry. The Dowager Duchess sat in a high-backed chair like a queen on a throne. She was beautiful, despite her age. Her face was cold as marble. She looked at Clara the way someone might look at an insect. "So you're the girl who thinks she can trap my son," the Dowager said. "I'm not trying to trap anyone, Your Grace," Clara said quietly. "Don't lie to me. Girls like you always have schemes. You see a lonely, wealthy man, and you think you can seduce him into ruining himself." The words stung. Clara had been called many things in her life, but never a schemer, never manipulative. "I love your son," she said. "That's the only truth that matters to me." The Dowager laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Love? You speak of love. Tell me, girl, what could you possibly offer a duke? You have no family, no fortune, no breeding. You can't navigate society. You would be a laughingstock, and he would be ridiculed for choosing you." Every word was a blade. Clara felt them cutting into her, because they were true. She had nothing to offer Alexander except her heart, and hearts didn't matter in his world. "You're right," Clara said. Tears blurred her vision, but she blinked them back. "I have nothing to offer him, but I love him enough to want what's best for him, even if that means letting him go." The Dowager stood. She crossed to Clara and studied her face carefully. "You actually mean that?" she said. She sounded surprised. "Yes, Your Grace." "Then prove it. Leave. Tonight. I'll pay your remaining debt and give you enough money to start somewhere new. You can have the fresh start you want. All you have to do is leave and never contact my son again." Clara's heart broke. It was the escape she had dreamed of for years. Freedom, money, a new life. All she had to do was walk away from the man she loved. "If I refuse," she asked, "then I'll make your life a misery. I have that power. I'll make sure no one in this county will employ you. I'll make sure Alexander sees you for what you really are. A burden he's too kind-hearted to release. Eventually, he'll resent you. He'll grow to hate you. Is that what you want?" "No," Clara whispered. "Then take the offer. Leave quietly. Spare you both the pain." Clara looked at the floor. She thought about Alexander, his kind eyes, his gentle hands, the way he looked at her like she mattered. She thought about how he had brought her back to life, just as she had brought him back. But she also thought about what the Dowager said, about how society would treat him, about how he might eventually regret choosing her, about how she would always be an embarrassment to him. "I'll leave," she said quietly. "Smart girl." The Dowager returned to her chair. "You'll be gone by morning. I'll make the arrangements." Clara curtsied and left. She walked through the halls in a daze. She packed her few belongings with numb hands. She couldn't believe this was happening. Just yesterday, she had been so happy. Now everything was ending. She left a note for Alexander in the library. Her hands shook as she wrote, "I'm sorry. Your mother is right. I can't give you what you need. Please forgive me. Please be happy. I will always love you. Clara." She placed it in the Shakespeare volume where he would find it. Then she left Thornfield Manor in the dark before dawn. A carriage took her to the nearest town. The dowager had given her £100 and a reference letter. It was more money than Clara had ever seen. She should have been grateful. She was free. She had money. She could start fresh somewhere new. But all she felt was empty. Alexander found the note that afternoon. He read it 3 times before the words sank in. Then he crumpled it in his fist and roared with rage. He tore through the house, looking for his mother. He found her in her sitting room, calmly doing needlework. "What did you do?" he demanded. "I saved you from yourself," she said without looking up. "You can thank me later." "Where is she?" "Gone, as she should be." "Really, Alexander, you should be relieved. Now you can move on with your life properly." Alexander wanted to shake her. He wanted to shout, but he knew his mother. She responded to emotion with ice. So he forced himself to be calm. "Mother," he said quietly, "I love her." "You loved Emma. This girl is just a distraction from your grief." "No." Alexander sat down across from his mother. "Emma was wonderful and I loved her deeply, but she's gone. I've mourned her for 3 years. Clara helped me learn to live again. That's not a distraction. That's salvation." The dowager finally looked at him. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Alexander, think about what you're saying. This girl is a servant. You're a duke. The scandal would be enormous." "I don't care about scandal." "But I do. Your father cared about our family name. Your ancestors built this legacy over centuries. You would throw it all away for a girl you barely know." "I know her better than I've known anyone," Alexander said. "She's kind, she's intelligent, she's strong. She's everything I want in a partner. And more importantly, she makes me happy. Actually happy." For the first time since Emma died, his mother set down her needlework. She studied him with sharp eyes. "You won't change your mind?" "No," she sighed. "Your father would be disappointed." "Father loved you," Alexander pointed out, "and you weren't born a duchess. You were an earl's daughter. Society accepted it. That's different." "Is it? Or is it just different enough that you can judge someone else for the same thing?" The dowager was quiet for a long moment. Finally she said, "Where did she go?" "I was hoping you would tell me. I sent her to an inn in the village. I gave her money and a reference. I assumed she would move on to find work elsewhere." Alexander stood. "Then I'm going to find her and bring her back." "Alexander, wait." His mother stood too. "If you do this, society will be cruel. They'll say terrible things about both of you. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes." "And what about her? Is she prepared? Because she'll bear the worst of it." Alexander paused. His mother was right about that. Clara would face vicious gossip. She would be snubbed by society. People would assume the worst about her. It would be painful, but he couldn't let her go. He loved her too much. "I'll protect her," he said. "Whatever it takes, I'll make sure she's safe and happy." The dowager studied him. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "You really do love her." "I really do."
"Then go find her."
"But Alexander, when you bring her back, you'll need to do this properly. Court her publicly. Make your intentions clear. Give society time to adjust. Can you be patient?" "If it means I can have her, I'll be as patient as necessary." His mother nodded. "Then you have my support. I don't fully approve, but I won't stand in your way. I want you to be happy, my dear, even if your choices give me grey hair." Alexander kissed her cheek. "Thank you, mother." He left immediately for the village. His heart pounded the entire carriage ride. What if Clara had already moved on? What if he couldn't find her? What if she refused to come back? He arrived at the inn and asked for her. The innkeeper directed him to a small room on the second floor. Alexander took the stairs 2 at a time. He knocked on the door. "Who is it?" Clara's voice came through, muffled. "It's me, please open the door." Silence. Then the sound of the lock turning. The door opened slowly. Clara stood there with red-rimmed eyes. She had been crying. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I should be wherever you are." Alexander stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Why did you leave?" "You know why. Your mother explained everything. She's right, Alexander. I'll only hurt you. The only thing that hurts is being without you." He crossed to her and took her hands. "Clara, I don't care what society thinks. I don't care about scandal. I only care about you." "But I care," Clara said. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I care that people will mock you. I care that you'll lose respect. I care that I'll never be good enough for your world. You're already good enough. You're more than enough. You're everything." Clara shook her head. "I'm scared, Alexander. I'm scared of ruining your life. I'm scared of not being what you need. I'm scared that one day you'll wake up and regret choosing me." Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "Listen to me. I've spent 3 years feeling nothing. I was existing, not living. You changed that. You made me remember what it feels like to be happy, to laugh, to look forward to tomorrow. How could I ever regret that? But your family, my mother has given us her blessing. Reluctant, but genuine, we have her support." Clara's eyes widened. "Truly, truly. So please, my love, stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. Let me protect you instead. Let me love you. Let me spend my life making you as happy as you've made me." Clara's face crumpled. She threw her arms around his neck and sobbed. Alexander held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Is that a yes?" he asked softly. "Yes," Clara said against his chest. "Yes, yes." Alexander pulled back just enough to kiss her. It was desperate and sweet and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Come home with me," Alexander said. "Please." "Home," Clara repeated. The word sounded like a prayer. "Yes, take me home." They returned to Thornfield Manor together. This time, Alexander didn't hide her. He introduced her to the entire household staff as someone important to him. He made it clear that she was to be treated with respect. Anyone who had a problem with it could find employment elsewhere. Over the following weeks, Alexander began to court Clara properly. He took her for walks in the garden. He invited her to dinner, with a chaperone of course, to maintain propriety. He gave her books with inscriptions inside. He made his intentions clear to everyone who mattered. Society was scandalized, of course. The gossip was vicious. But Alexander stood firm. He appeared at social events with his mother and spoke openly about Clara. He made it known that he intended to marry her. Some people were outraged. Others were intrigued. A few romantic souls thought it was terribly exciting. Clara struggled with the attention. She wasn't used to being discussed by strangers. She wasn't comfortable with the way people stared at her when she went to town with Alexander, but he never left her side. He never let anyone speak rudely to her in his presence. He made her feel safe. And slowly, Clara began to believe she deserved this. She began to hold her head high. She began to accept that she was worthy of love. Alexander told her every day how much he loved her. He showed her through actions. He never made her feel less than. 6 months after that day in the garden, Alexander proposed properly. He took Clara back to the spot by the pond where they had first confessed their feelings. He got down on one knee and offered her a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "Clara Bennett," he said, "you are the bravest, kindest, most wonderful person I've ever known. You've given me a reason to live again. You've made me happier than I ever thought possible. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Clara couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She nodded frantically. Alexander laughed and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he stood and spun her in a circle while she laughed and cried at the same time. They were married in the spring at Thornfield Manor. It was a small ceremony. Alexander's mother attended, along with a handful of close friends. Clara wore a simple but beautiful gown. She carried roses from the garden. When the vicar pronounced them husband and wife, Alexander kissed her like she was his whole world. Because she was. After the ceremony there was a small celebration. Musicians played. People danced. Clara watched it all in wonder. A year ago she had been scrubbing the floors while nobles danced above her head. Now she was one of them. Not because of her title, but because Alexander loved her. He found her standing at the edge of the room, watching the dancers. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, offering his hand. Clara looked at his hand, then at his face. She remembered that first night, how she had imagined what it would feel like to be asked to dance, how impossible it had seemed. "I don't know how," she admitted. "I'll teach you." Alexander drew her onto the floor. "Just follow my lead." He placed her hand on his shoulder and took her other hand in his. His arm went around her waist. The music started, and they began to move. Clara stumbled at first. She stepped on his toes. She went the wrong direction. But Alexander was patient. He guided her gently. He whispered encouragement, and gradually she found the rhythm. They moved together, turning in slow circles. "I love you," Alexander said, looking down at her with those warm, dark eyes. "I love you too," Clara said, "more than I ever thought possible." "We're going to have a wonderful life together," he promised. "I'm going to spend every day making sure you know how precious you are." Clara smiled up at him. She believed him. For the first time in years, she believed in happiness. She believed in love. She believed in a future that was bright and full of possibilities. They danced until the music ended. When they stopped, everyone applauded. Clara blushed, but she didn't hide. She stood beside Alexander and accepted the congratulations of their guests. Later that night, when everyone had gone, Alexander took Clara to the library. It was their special place, where they had fallen in love among the books. "This is where it all began," he said softly. "Yes," Clara agreed. She ran her hand along the shelf she had been dusting that first day. "I never imagined then what would happen." "Neither did I. But I'm so grateful for every moment that brought us here." Alexander pulled her close. "You've given me everything, Clara. Purpose, joy, love. You've made me whole again." "You did the same for me," Clara said. "You gave me back myself. You made me believe I was worthy of good things. You are worthy of everything good in this world." Alexander kissed her forehead. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." They stood there in the quiet library, holding each other. Outside, the moon rose over the gardens. Inside, the fire crackled softly. Everything was peaceful. Everything was right. Clara thought about the girl she had been just a year ago, broken, hopeless, scrubbing floors and expecting nothing from life. That girl was gone now. In her place was a woman who was loved, a woman who had found her place in the world, a woman who was happy. It hadn't been easy. Love never was, but it had been worth every struggle, every tear, every moment of fear, because in the end, She had found something most people spent their whole lives searching for. She had found home, not in a place, but in a person. In Alexander's arms, she was finally where she belonged, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she would never scrub floors in darkness again. Instead, she would dance in the light, with the man who loved her, for the rest of their lives, together.